Welcome to Life List, a birding podcast.
Hello, welcome everybody. This is Life List, a birding podcast. I am George Armistead here with my co-host Alvaro Jaramillo.
Hello.
And we also have a special guest today, Trish Miller, who comes to us from Cape May. She is probably, I think it's fair to say, if not the major world authority on golden eagles, certainly among an elite group there, and has done a lot of work tracking birds with CTT and Conservation Science Global. She's down in Cape May today on a nice summer day. Trish, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks so much for inviting me to talk with you today.
Yes, excited about it.
Welcome.
This has been one I've been looking forward to. I think we even were in touch like a year ago or so about doing this, and then schedules finally aligned, and here we are. I was saying, Al, Trish and I were talking just before we started recording. I think when I was president of the DVOC, Delaware Valley Ornithological Club, she came to talk on golden eagles here in Philly, and I missed the talk. I think I might have arranged the talk. I can't remember, but I think
Wow.
At the very least I requested it, but then I ended up being away, and I was like, darn, man, this is a story I've been wanting to kind of hear for a while. The golden eagle and where it has led you, Trish, and how it led to CTT. Maybe we should start with some broad brush strokes here. And you want to just tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Trish Miller. I am the executive director, and I'm a senior wildlife biologist with Conservation Science Global. We're a nonprofit that seeks to we do research on natural resources to help inform management of those resources, and also to inform education. I've been studying golden eagles since 2005, when my partner, my husband then, Mike Lanzone, and I were living in Pennsylvania. And
it's a great state, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the great state of Pennsylvania, where so many golden eagles migrate through on those ridges. It's a fabulous place. So back in 2005, and actually even before that, I saw my first golden eagle on Tussey Mountain back in 2000. And Tussey Mountain is a spring migration hotspot in Pennsylvania.
Right near State College, yeah?
Yep. And I'm a Midwest girl, and we had moved to Pennsylvania in 2000. That's why I saw my first one. But it wasn't until 2005 that we actually got the opportunity to study them. And one of our research partners, Todd Kastner, he started working at the National Aviary. Mike and I were working at Powder Mill Nature Reserve, which is Carnegie Museum of Natural History's biological field station. And Todd came out, and we were talking about collaborating on a project, and golden eagles came up. And funny thing is, Todd didn't even really realize that there was so many golden eagles that moved through, but he was really excited about it. And so the three of us together, we also knew that wind energy development was coming on strong in the ridges, and the exact place that so many birds, not just golden eagles, but concentrate their movements during migration. And so there's a potential conservation problem there, as we knew from other places like out west in California and even in Europe, that eagles in particular were at risk of collision with wind turbines. So that's how the project started.
Nice.
Yeah.
You've spent some probably pretty brisk days up there on Tussey Mountain, I imagine. I understand if the conditions are right, you can get a couple dozen golden eagles passing in a day. I know they've had 20 or 30 sometimes at least.
Up to, I think, over 60.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what the daily record is. We'd be during fall migration. I believe it's over 70, and that may be at the Allegheny front. I don't know. There's always these battles between hawk watchers as to who gets the most each year and who has the highest record of individuals in a day. But yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now, with these golden eagles, do you think you guys went up there and started realizing that these are really moving through? In fact, and I'll be birding next month with Nick Bulgiano, who spends a lot of time up there on Tussey.
Right.
And do you think golden eagles have increased in the east, or simply the detection has increased? Both?
I guess that's up for debate.
Yeah.
Nobody's really, there's never been any really substantial population level studies, like the demography studies on the eastern population. When we started the project, we were estimating, 1,000 to 2,000 individuals. Then one of Todd's students did some research using hawk watches and estimated somewhere around maybe 5,000 individuals. What's been seen at hawk watches, whether those numbers went up because people started recognizing or being able to differentiate between bald and golden eagles, those kinds of things, it's up for debate. If you look at the raptor population index, I think it suggests that based on that the populations have increased. But what we think is they're probably stable, but don't really know. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, when I was going to school in Toronto, it was weird. If you had the right situation, and golden eagles were supposed to be pretty rare, on campus you could look up and wait, and you would see golden eagles flying over, and people say, "What? You're not supposed to be here. They're super rare." But I think there was an element of people weren't quite looking, especially in the specific situation. There was really brisk, cold, after the front, puffy little clouds. It was really almost like they were the only thing moving with a few Sharpies or something. It was sort of odd, and it wasn't like most people weren't hawk watching at that point because it was late too in the season. So you wonder if that's what part of it too. People weren't really looking in the right places or in the right times.
Yeah, historically, hawk watches, I think a lot of them ended by November, and you still get a significant movement of golden eagles into December, even through December. We've had telemetered birds not arriving on their wintering grounds until January or even later in January. And so, some of these movements tend to be later than the bulk of the other hawk migrations.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like there's also a little bit of an uptick. And again, I don't know if this is detection and people just sort of figuring out how to look or where to look and when to look, in kind of quote out of season reports of goldens as well. I've seen reports in like August, and we had one here in Philly, local birder named Ed Edge photographed one. I think it was like in the first week of May or something going, and I was just like, historically, it's sort of like I was saying, somebody say you had a golden eagle at all was a good bird, but like if you did, it was going to be November, December, maybe like March, and kind of almost anything outside of that was like, forget it, you misidentified it, you're wrong, and now it's just like, I think, I don't know what's going on, but they're being documented a lot more.
So one thing that the telemetry data has shown is that these juvenile birds can stay into May like mid-May. I think our latest departure was May 11th from the Appalachians. And so seeing a bird in May, in my mind, wouldn't be out of the norm. If it's an adult, it would be, or even a subadult, but a juvenile, I can totally see being, yeah. So those don't surprise me. August is a harder one because it should be the younger birds early, although there is a lot of overlap, more overlap in timing between juvenile subs and adults in the fall, and they're more staggered in the spring. But August would be a red flag, but there are explanations for that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So first of all, I got to go back because we talked about whether or not the populations are increasing, decreasing, stable. One place in the where they have decreased and actually been extirpated is that they were occupying nest sites in Maine until 1999. And since 1999, there have been none. And there have been no chicks produced in the Northeast since 1984, I believe. So that population has been extirpated. But what's going on in Canada is more of a mystery. So when we go back is that at one time in the past, people thought that golden eagles had previously bred further south, and the most further south in the Northeast. The most reliable and accepted southernmost nest is on the Susquehanna outside of Harrisburg, but nothing further south than that that anybody considers a reliable documentation. But in the 80s, they started introducing golden eagles into Georgia, North Carolina, and kind of in that general area, also in Tennessee. And those introduction, yeah. So they released somewhere 200 birds. I think they even released some up on Bald Eagle Mountain in Pennsylvania, just outside of State College.
So were Goldens historically known from those areas?
No, the furthest south nesting was
Susquehanna.
Susquehanna. So what ended up happening is you have these 200 plus birds. Even in Tennessee, the last introduction was in 2006. They ended up having some birds establish territories. And these are all birds that were brought from out west to the east and released. And then at least two pairs established nest sites, one in Tennessee and one in Georgia. And the one in Tennessee, and we don't know if the same pair or somebody else came in, but as late as 2012, there was a documented chick that ended up it starved. It was found it was being almost dead, and then they brought it into rehab and ended up dying because of starvation. Mm. And then there was one picked up in Virginia, a juvenile, in 2015, I think it was. And that one was rehabbed and released, unfortunately. And we put a telemetry unit on it and tracking it, trying to see what happened. And it ended up disappearing. And so it probably died as well. But that bird was found in August. Any birds that are fledging up in Quebec are fledging in mid-July and very unlikely to make it down to Virginia by early to mid-August. I can't remember what day it was found. And we also looked at feather isotopes. And so on that bird, you can look at the feathers and you can compare it to hydrogen isotopes. There's just different I'm not an expert in isotopes. All I know is you can basically identify a general area where a feather was grown.
Right.
And so we've over the years, we've taken feathers from birds we've captured on the wintering grounds, and we've even taken samples of ones that were growing in at the time. And so we could tell that feather closely matched feathers that were grown on the wintering grounds, but we can't rule out that it didn't come from, say, the Gaspé Peninsula, is the furthest south nesting area in Quebec right now. Anyway, so these sightings that people might have, if they have photographic evidence, the juvenile, I mean, we don't have any other evidence of that any more breeding has occurred since, say, 2015 when that bird showed up in Virginia. But there's always a rare possibility that something's still going on. And, there are a lot of remote places that
Sure.
we just can't get to, we don't see. And these birds tend to be rather cryptic because of the habitats they occupy.
Right. Like I think some of what your work has shown, right, is that they actually inhabit woodlands a good bit more than people realize at times. And of course, when they're flying, they can be very, very high. I think personally, as someone who's been birding, my entire life in the East Coast, I think I've only ever seen like one perched golden eagle in the East. It's like, I remember it well because I looked at it and thought, oh, it was an eagle. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's not a bald eagle.
Yeah.
That's really, habits don't lend themselves, right, to take a lot of time.
Well, what we say is that you can see them really well during migration, but once they're on the wintering grounds, if they're not up and flying around, they're really hard to pick out and see because they're in places that people tend not to be. And if you have a brown bird that's perched in a brown tree, then good luck picking it out. It's not easy. Yeah. We call them the ghosts of the eastern forest. It's amazing what they do and what we've seen, when we have birds that come into our trap sites, you would think they would come from the open area or down a road. No, I mean, we've seen them come straight out of the woods. When we release them, they go straight into the woods and they'll fly like an accipiter, like twisting and turning and just things that people just don't think golden eagles do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they, well, with the isotope data, do you know if they are eating sort of what level on the food chain? Essentially, are they, are they eating small mammals versus larger mammals? Given that your description of being in the woodlands, I'm thinking, boy, they might be eating like cottontails and squirrels rather than small deer or something.
Well, there's lots of evidence that they eat turkeys.
Okay, turkey.
I really you could look up on the internet and say golden eagle wild turkey, and there's some videos, at least one video from Tennessee where they had a camera trap up at a place they were baiting for turkeys to catch them for research purposes, and a young golden eagle came in and had chased the turkey. And we've had a bird that we caught in Alabama, and we've been tracking her since 2015. She's still sending data, but she comes back to the place. We've actually caught her twice too. She's come back to that same trap site and roost nearby, and we've been able to go down by the roost tree and recovered a pellet, and it had turkey toes in it. So we know she doesn't just feed on the deer that we provide, but she also goes out hunting. We can see that in her telemetry.
I hope she eats more than the toes, man.
Yeah. Is that
those
where they
come out?
Yeah, it's probably why they arrive at Thanksgiving, right? So
that's
right.
a good call. That's strong.
I know, exactly.
Yeah,
good correlation there.
They hit Canadian Thanksgiving first in October, then they head to American Thanksgiving in November.
But they do have they have a pretty diverse diet, but mostly feeding on terrestrial animals. We've even seen in West Virginia, we had a trap problem with a trap, and while Mike and Todd were fixing the trap, I was watching this young golden eagle in a field, and it was mousing. You could see it walking around and like searching for voles and things like that.
Oh, wow.
Which was really, really fun to watch. But they probably more often take larger, medium-sized animals than large animals. Like, there's evidence they can kill deer. And obviously, they can kill turkeys, and they also feed on carrion. They're opportunistic.
And the ones out west are pretty, they really take some larger game at times, is my understanding, right? They'll knock mountain goats off cliffs and stuff like that, like small, I don't know about adults, but I've heard.
Yeah. I know that my friend Carol McIntyre, who studies goldens in Denali, she's mentioned that, certain nests will have parts of young mountain goats in the nest, and it probably depends on the position of the nest compared to where the goats are.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's kind of circling back to the beginning here. How tell us a little bit about how golden eagles became your focus, and how that led to the formation of cellular tracking technologies, and maybe sketch out for folks what CTT, cellular tracking technologies, is all about. Okay.
So, I said we started this project in 2005. Back in 2005, that we decided that in order to determine how golden eagles were flying and how they would, and the potential interaction with wind turbines, we needed to get GPS data. And at that time, the GPS units you could get were, we call them satellite telemetry units. So it has a GPS in it, and it communicates over the Argo satellite system. So it collects data, sends it up to the satellite, and the data are sent back down to a server in France. And so we bought 3 of those units, and we put them out on golden eagles starting in November of 2006. And when we looked at the spring migration data that we were getting, the best track we had, so we need to have flight data. So the GPS gives you information about how high they're flying, where they are, how fast they're flying, and the direction they're going. And so we had a track of something like 17 points across Pennsylvania. And we're like, well, that's not going to tell us much. We're going to have to tag so many birds to get the information we need to answer this question. And so Mike Lanzone, who is my husband, he started contacting the telemetry companies, and they're like, no, we can't give you more than 12 points a day at that time. And then he's like, well, can you give it to us in a burst so that we get them all in a short period? No, we can only get them once an hour or less frequently than that. So that was no. So he's like, well, I have this idea that we can use a GPS and send the data over the cell phone network. And then because you're not going up to the satellite and back to Earth, but just through the cell phone network, you can collect a lot more data a lot more frequently. And he's like, can you work with me to develop a unit that can do that? And they're like, no. And
a lot of it was like no, and
no. Yes. And some of them were not particularly nice about how they did them. I think he was hung up by somebody. So anybody who knows Mike knows that if he has a challenge, it's something he needs.
Like a bulldog, right? Yeah.
Right. No isn't the answer he takes. And so he said, well, I guess I'll just have to do it myself. And so he, for years, this is 2005. If you remember, we had flip phones. There were no iPhones and things like that. Or you got 2006. All this started. He, like my family and everybody knew, would give him old cell phones. And so he had this drawer at his bioacoustic lab of cell phones, and he put all these things together. He said, I'm going to do it myself. And I'm like, okay, well, both Todd and I are like, all right, well, we'll see that when that happens. And it was like in a few days, he comes back and he says, I did it. I put it together. I'm like, did you put it on a bird? Well, not quite. Because if you think about it, you have to have something small. So when we put a telemetry unit on a bird, it has to be less than 3% of their body weight. And you have so you're looking at something generally under or less than 100 grams. And so that wasn't going to happen. But it honestly did not take him that long. He found a guy, Casey Halverson, out in Seattle, who agreed to help him with the coding for this thing. And then within a year, we had prototype units to put out on birds. And that was the beginning of CTT, which is now much more than making, we call those cell phone GPS units, we call them GSM units. And they now have everything from, they can track everything from elephant seals down to, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, monarch butterflies. And they have many, many other technologies, not just GSM, but they have radio technologies as well. Units that you can put on small birds that don't take a battery. It's an amazing what they've done and what they've developed over the last 15 years or so, and how the company has grown. We moved to Cape May in 2015, and with that, the company came to Cape May, and also the company grew considerably from that time point on.
Yeah, like I think the first time I met Mike, we were in Colorado Bird Observatory. Maybe I think it's now Rocky Mountain Bird Observatory, and we were like doing point counts in like the early mid 90s or something. And it was quite a cadre of us. It was like, it was me and Mike and Brian Gibbons and Chris Wood was out there. Quite a bunch of people. And like, I didn't see Mike for quite a while after that, but I always kind of kept tabs. And all of a sudden when CTT it seemed like it just like blew up a little bit, blew up more, blew up, and just grew and grew and grew. And now you guys have a big office there in Cape May. I don't know how many employees you have, or like how many species you've tracked, but
I don't know. He has like over 40 employees, and the building they're in also has bird safe glass on the front.
That's awesome.
Which he insisted when they were building it. He said that he insisted they put in bird safe glass because the whole front of all those buildings are all glass. So
that's good too.
I had to point that out because nobody points that out. I gotta point that out.
Also, like, I understand Cape May is a pretty good place for bird migration, so it's an important place to have that as any. That's very cool.
Yeah.
When one of these birds had one of these units, how did it kind of work? Was it like almost like it had its own cell number and it would be calling back to the tower and dropping the data, or was it something completely different? Like if you had to just simplify it for regular humans?
Well, the first prototype units actually did have a phone number associated with them. Now the units have, and then subsequent ones had actual SIM cards in them. Mm-hmm. And they could change out the SIM card if they got a unit back or something like that if they needed to. And now they have, I guess, an electronic SIM card in them. But basically, the unit has a little cell phone modem in there. It has a GPS unit and an accelerometer, which measures movement on several axes. and then it has a battery and a solar panel. And so you can program those units any way you want. And what I didn't say is that once we started using those units, we were getting a point every 30 seconds versus a point every hour. So we could actually see, where the birds were moving, how they were responding to topography, how they were responding to weather. And we could also see where they were going, which, you could always see where they were going with the satellite units, but you couldn't see all those other things. So anyway, the unit will collect all these GPS data and accelerometer data, and it stores it on board. And then our units are programmed to try to connect to the cell phone network once a day. And if it doesn't connect, it just stores the data on the unit. And then when it's able to reconnect, it'll send all those data over the cell phone network to a server at CTT. And then me as a researcher, we have a SQL server that goes in each night and downloads any data that were collected and sent from any of our units. And so over the past, 16 years, 17 years, and we've tagged over 100 golden eagles. Us and our partners have tagged over 100 golden eagles in the eastern part of. Does that get to the question about how they work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of those golden eagles, like, are there any that you have a particular fondness or fascination of? I'm sure all of them feel like your children in a way, but
yeah, I mean, we do have certain connections, like the one I told you about, that she had turkey toes in one of her pellets. We call her Natchez. We will give the birds a name that's associated with the place that they were captured. Now, in the old days, when we only had a few birds, we had numbers, and we still have numbers, but it's hard for me mentally to associate a number with a bird anymore because we have so many that we've been tracking. So Natchez is one I'm very fond of. She is one of the first birds that we tagged. She was captured in Northwest Alabama at the Freedom Hills Wildlife Management Area. And she migrates up through Wisconsin, through the UP, and goes up to the eastern side of the Hudson Bay.
Oh, wow.
Each year. And she's been doing that. And from her data, I can sometimes tell if she's nested or not nested. But she goes up to the same winter range or same breeding range every year and comes back down to the same wintering range. When we caught her the first time, we were trying to catch a pair. So she was hanging out with a male, and she was feeding on the carcass, and so we wanted to catch both of them at the same time and put a telemetry unit on them to find out if they're just hanging out in the wintertime or if they're actually a breeding pair that's wintering together. And when we fired the net, the male had come in and had landed, and she jumped off the carcass, and he was just behind the carcass. We fired the net, and she jumped up high and held the net up with her wings so that he could scoot out underneath.
Wow.
But yeah, it was devastating, but cool, because when he flew out, he landed on the edge of the field, which is a small field, and he sat there and he watched us get her out of the net. And then we took her away and we processed her and we put her telemetry unit on, and then we let her go. And when he was feeding and whatever, they were kind of like talking to one another vocalizing to one another.
So I'm sorry, this is on the wintering. This is in a winter territory in the pit.
In wintering ground.
They're a functional pair on.
Well, they were communicating. They were sitting next to another. We see this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But when we let her go, he was still nearby, and they started calling back and forth to one another. And so we never were able to catch him. But one thing that did happen, so we've documented this, or we've seen this behavior over and over. We have a male and female pair that are using the same carcass, feeding together, sitting together, doing things that seem like it's a pair bond. In 2018, we went to Kentucky and we caught a male at a Bernheim research forest and arboretum, and we came back the next year, and we had the same behavior. This male was hanging out with a female. We were able to catch that female, but we still didn't know, are they, a wintering pair, or do they leave? So and in March, they both left at the same time, but he went past Duluth and she went straight north through the Straits of Mackinac Straits. And then she started to turn left, but there's no cell phone coverage up there. And we knew where he was going. He was going just south of Churchill to Wapusk National Park. And so we had to wait until they came back south because they collect all those data in the summertime. And then we don't see them unless they connect to the cell network, and which they don't tend to do up there. And when they came back south, it turned out that they were a breeding pair that winters together.
Wow.
And they don't take the same migration route.
Wow. That is wild. I would never have guessed that. Never knew that.
No. So that's an N of one, right? We don't know. Is that what all these pairs that are acting like pairs, are they really breeding pairs?
Right. It's one of those things. I guess if it happens once, it's probably happened more than once, but probably I would imagine there's quite a few instances where that's not the case. Is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we continue to try to capture pairs, but it is exceedingly difficult.
They're smart.
To do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they tend to be more wary, after you've caught them once, although some of them, they like that reliable food source and they'll come back year after year.
Do you use Canon nets or like BC type?
Like if we used the Canon net, we would have caught them both because the nets are huge. Like we used to, when we started out, we started trapping during migration using bow nets. But now we trap on the wintering grounds. We trap deer carcasses and cameras. And then we have, we started out using a giant air cannon, but it's really difficult to move around. We need a trailer. It's huge. It's not very inconspicuous, but it has a huge net. And then we started using, I think in 2009, we started using a net launcher, which is a small compact net that shoots out, that we can shoot out remotely. But it's a 20 by 20 net, and it's even when it's shot out, it doesn't ever make that full spread, so it's really difficult to catch two birds at once.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have to try.
So let's imagine that there's a whole bunch of these nesting pairs that winter together. What do you think the way it happens is? Do you think that they meet up like as immatures up north and they go, look, this is a great place, we should hang out together, and they migrate once together and then they kind of take their own route? Or do they meet in the winter and the male says, I'll follow you up? But the fact that they don't migrate together sort of is really problematic to figuring out how they go from one place to the other. They have to do it at least once together.
You would think. Yeah. I mean, from what we know about golden eagle biology, an individual will look for, an open nesting territory. These breeding territories can be very old. Like the one that was the oldest known one in the Northeast has been documented since before the 1700s. I think
Oh, wow.
There's Native Americans. So, they're holding, especially these cliff sites, they're holding them for a really long time. And, as an individual gets old or gets killed, then another individual will move in. So it doesn't make sense to me that they meet on, as juveniles. That wouldn't make sense to me. What makes more sense to me is that somebody finds an open nest site on the breeding grounds and they meet up there. And it could be like with the two from Kentucky, we don't really know if at one point in the past they migrated together, because we did see last year the female, so that male has died, but the female did migrate past Duluth this year. And it could be just a weather thing, although they do have some learned responses. But she was hanging out with another male this year. We tried to catch him and we're not able to. But nonetheless, I don't, from what we know about golden eagle biology, I don't think they would meet up on the wintering grounds, but there's no definitive evidence to say that they don't. But just based on how they find their territories, it makes sense they would meet on the breeding ground.
Yeah, and I guess another option could be something like really cool, which would be that they migrate independently to a general area and they're moving around, finding food, and they see each other and actually recognize each other.
Yeah.
That would be, as a scientist, you're thinking, well, surely they can't do that, but obviously they probably do.
That could be, because we also don't, the Eastern U.S. is big, but, the birds get funneled to certain areas. And so, that's a possibility, because we do see individuals that do not hang out with, another of the opposite sex. So we see individuals that are just by themselves that don't appear to have a pair around. And so it could be like this random chance thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating and to think about, to try to figure out what in the world's going on. Unfortunately, that's a question that may remain forever because it would be just so hard to ever answer it.
Yeah, the secrets of love in the
golden eagle.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. I got a question too about some of the Canadian areas where you're seeing these birds go to. Are they in tundra, or are they in sort of boreal forest habitats, or does it span a whole range?
So they go from the far north all the way down into the mixed temperate forest.
Okay.
Yeah. So they span all three of those biomes, right? Taiga, tundra, and boreal and mixed boreal.
Yeah. Oh wow. Really versatile. I guess that's why they're so widespread.
Worldwide.
Right. And then they they're not just cliff nesters. There's a lot that nest in trees. So all those birds that are up in Manitoba on the west side of the Hudson Bay, there's not a heck of a lot of cliffs around there. So some of those birds are they're definitely using trees, because we've actually been talking with people at Wapusk National Park, and they went out and saw this nest of this pair that I just told you the story about, doing some surveys. And we actually would like to, they're going to try to install cameras on the nest next year before they come in to breed, so we can see what they're doing up there. And we might be able to identify that new male by his tail pattern. We'll see if we don't catch him this coming winter.
So I got a silly question. So that
I believe that. Yeah.
yeah,
I believe that story. Yeah.
you know the legend of Tenochtitlan in Mexico, where if you look at the Mexican flag, right, has a golden eagle and a snake,
Yeah.
and on a puntia cactus on a rock that's on a in a lake. And the legend was basically that there's this kind of magical little island with a cactus and so forth, and if the bird lands with a snake, that's the place to make your big city, your Aztec empire. And that's what Mexico City is there, right?
Uh-huh.
So, but there's this argument. A lot of people say that probably the bird that they were thinking about wasn't a golden eagle, because that doesn't sound like golden eagle behavior to be perching on a cactus with a snake. It was probably a caracara, and that's the bird that should be on the flag of Mexico. From your biological experience, would you be on golden eagle team for the flag or caracara team for the flag? And of course, we're going to offend a lot of Mexican.
Oh boy, I don't know if I should take a stand on that. I mean,
just, what do you think? Is that unusual behavior for a golden eagle to be sort of perching on obviously this is a legend, right? It's not like somebody was.
Go with biologist Trish here. Not,
yeah. Because I'm fascinated by misidentification and identification of birds. And this could be the largest, most important misidentification of a bird ever, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm putting you on the spot, but it's a silly question. It's a silly question in that it really doesn't matter. The symbol of Mexico is the golden eagle, and it always will be. But I wonder if somehow along the line, and some historians have thought it's a caracara. But
yeah, I mean, but a caracara doesn't even look anything like a golden eagle.
Maybe a young one. I don't know.
But way back. You got to think these people. They didn't have binoculars, what have you. They didn't. They were just looking there, and they were just sort of saying probably a raptor. It's probably the. But it got some.
You're saying their ID skills were a little flimsy out. Boy, you're really casting a bird.
Maybe, yeah. And
Are there other snake eaters in
some small hawks,
the desert out there?
Yeah. I get, there would be, but probably the main one you sort of see with a snake is probably crested caracara.
Yeah.
But do golden eagles eat snakes regularly that you think or seen, or is it? Maybe that's the question to ask. And then I'll make my decision.
I imagine they would eat snakes. I don't see them eating snakes out here because there are no snakes around at the time. But they primarily take birds and mammals.
Yeah.
But they are opportunistic, and I can see that they might. Although I'm just looking at the birds of the world, and there's nothing that says they take snakes. So if they take snakes, it's some probably a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
And not something that would be seen enough.
Yeah.
Out west,
Right.
Or in Mexico that that it would deserve putting on the
exactly.
the flag. Although golden eagle's just much more majestic than a caracara. I don't want to offend the caracara lovers because they're really cool. Caracaras are awesome.
They're clever. Caracaras are smart, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's part of it too, is because the golden eagle is so regal and everybody is agrees, like, wow, golden eagle. They are the symbol for so many nations all over the northern hemisphere. And it seems that giving one to the caracara would be okay, just one. Just
they deserve one.
Just I don't know, or at least maybe there's a secondary flag that can be put up for somewhere with a little caracara on it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's up to you to go to the Mexican government.
It's a silly question. That's what I do here.
That's fun.
But you learn a little bit about biology with it too, and history. I think it's we'll get letters. Hopefully,
yeah.
Pro caracara or anti caracara. I don't know.
Yeah. Guys, we're getting close to our time here, but a couple quick questions about golden eagles, Trish. I was reading about martial eagles recently, and I think they have, like, I didn't read the exact study, but I saw that they were said to have been able to detect prey from something like 4 miles away. Like, I presume they saw like a antelope scamper in the distance, and somebody was watching it, and they somehow, calculated that distance. People always ask about eagle eyes, right? And what their vision's like. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Also, longevity, how long these things live or are known to live, and maybe what's typical versus some outliers. And then also just a little bit about like ranges. How much ground do these birds cover on their winter and breeding territories? Like how big are those territories? That's a lot of questions. Sorry.
It is a lot of questions. Eyesight, they can see really far.
Yeah, it's hard to measure.
Yeah, I mean, they can be thousands of feet up and be able to spot, an animal on the ground. How often they need to do that is a different story, but they can certainly, see from far enough away that the animal doesn't see them. That probably makes them very successful hunters. Yeah. What was the second question?
The ranges of their home range, and also longevity. Their
longevity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the range size, range size really depends on prey availability and age. So, on the breeding grounds, like some of these winter ranges, our breeding ranges are like 15 kilometers across. They're really, really tiny. And others, if they have lower availability of food, then they'll have a bigger range size. And if they're successful breeders versus unsuccessful, then they'll breed, they'll use a much larger area. If they're not attached to a nest, then they'll go other places around their territory to hunt. And so, and if they're not breeding at all, like they don't hold a territory, then you get birds that are roaming all over the place. And that's what we see, especially of young birds, subadults especially. And those birds are wandering over, hundreds, if not thousands of square kilometers. And they're probably looking for open nest sites, open territories, or weakly held territories that they can come back to and try to muscle their way into. So it's highly variable. Their winter ranges tend to be bigger than their smaller ranges. I have a paper that tells you like what the means and all that, where I wasn't expecting it. So I don't have that information off the top of my head. But that also varies. So some of these adults are holding pretty small winter territories, and juveniles and subadults much larger ones. What's interesting about these winter territories is that once an adult tends to, and I say territory, it's probably more of a home range. So a territory is something they defend, a home range is something they use. And so in the winter, they're probably not defending a territory, rather they're using an area, and they could be using that with other eagles. So adults tend to go to the same small winter range every year. A juvenile will come, and they often will go further south in the first year, and they may go back there in the second year, but then in the, sometimes the second or third winter, even the fourth winter, they tend to shift that winter range to further north. And that's really neat to see. We don't know why they do it or what. And some birds, like we had a bird we caught in Georgia as a second winter, and he went to a different place every year after his third winter. So he went back to Georgia his third winter, but then he ended up wintering in Missouri. He wintered in Tennessee, I believe, and then in Indiana, before he died of lead poisoning in Southern Illinois last year. But he's like probably out of the norm. Not most of these birds end up going to the same place every summer.
I guess part of the reason these things are so successful is that they are flexible and adaptable, as a species. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I think that, they're extremely powerful. I mean, they have this global distribution distribution across the northern hemisphere. And they've adapted to so many different environments.
Yeah.
And they're awesome. They can kill deer. I mean, if you have a bird that can kill a deer, it's pretty wild. Yeah.
And how old's the oldest individual that you might be aware of?
Oh, so, I mean, I think they can live up to 30 years. You get a lot of juvenile mortality, early mortality, and then these older birds can live a very long time.
No, that makes sense. I think you kind of, it reminds me of a lot of the birds, especially longer lived birds. If you can get past the first couple of years, then you can potentially go a really long time. You just need to pick the right spots to live and have a little bit of luck.
Yeah, I think probably, once they've figured out how to hunt and they get through that first year, then they're kind of safe until they start trying to settle in on breeding territory, and because then they end up in fights and probably a lot of mortality on the breeding grounds is from fighting with other eagles.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely see that in bald eagles.
Yes, I was shocked years ago. Lisa Smith at Tri-State Bird Rescue told me something like they get like over 50 bald eagles a year at Tri-State Bird Rescue, and it's basically all early in the breeding season, almost all from battling, where they just plummet to the ground in battles, and then people find these birds injured and they end up. But that's just in sort of the Delaware Valley region. They get 50 some bald eagles a year. I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. They fight hard to keep those territories, and they're precious, right?
Yeah, those are obvious concentration points, like we were sort of talking about, because they are hard to find good breeding sites. That's a limiting factor for sure. Well, we should think about wrapping up here, guys. Trish, is there anything else you want folks to know about your work or other opportunities that they might have to learn about stuff? I did want to say I follow you guys on Instagram, Cellular Tracking Technologies. That's the handle. Some really cool posts there about ongoing work and some of the people that you work with. Anything else, folks, you want to know about your work or what's coming up?
Well, if you're interested in specific research that we do, you can go to consciglobal.org or just Google Conservation Science Global. You can see some maps of the telemetry data we've collected, and as well as a list of our publications. And if anybody's interested in reading more about golden eagle home range or other things like that, you can certainly send me an email, and I'm happy to share any of the publications if you can't find them online. We have some exciting projects coming up. We got more funding just the other day to study, do some more studies on golden eagles in the southeastern U.S. We found a lot of birds in the Ozarks. So if you live in the Ozarks, keep your eyes open in the wintertime for golden eagles, because there are a heck of a lot more there than anybody recognizes. I will be doing some more work down there this winter, and I'm hoping that we can get into Mississippi as well and do some tagging there, but we have to get a contact and get some permits. And then we're also going to be doing, funding's not fully approved yet, but we think we're going to get some money to do some studies in Maine. And if you live in Maine, keep your eyes out in the summertime, especially in the northern part of the state, and look for golden eagles that might be exploring eyries over there, because there's probably a dozen historic eyries that aren't occupied now, but they could be in the future.
Ripe for fresh nesting attempts.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, Trish. We really appreciate you being here today. And
Thank you.
Thanks.
It was
Thanks
fun.
a lot. Thanks for contemplating my silly questions.
Anytime.
Great. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll be back again soon. Cheers, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.